If there were ever a time in modern history that we need to know about soul care, it's probably now. We are under duress. We are under stress. There's so many different things going on in the world right now. And, I had a colleague recently talk about it in terms of combat fatigue, that we are constantly tired. We're constantly processing. We're constantly experiencing something that is wearing us out. And it's causing a lot of difficulty with motivating ourselves to take care of ourselves, stay on top of our typical self-care. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the difference between self-care and soul care and why right now it's more important than any time in our modern history for us to understand this and start to practice this. So, it's not unusual at all when there's a disruption in a person's life that their self-care routine gets out of whack if they have one. And I say if they have one because it is really hard to get a self-care routine because many people don't even know what it is that they want and need. And that will lead me into helping you understand soul care in just a moment. But it's not unusual at all when our worlds are kind of thrown apart, torn apart, whatever, to lose track of what it is that we normally do to take care of ourselves. So whether it's that we get out of our exercise routines, whether it's nutrition goes out the window, whether it's our sleep goes out the window, or our time in spiritual practice or church practice, whether it is we don't spend time with friends as much, whatever it is that is going on in our lives that is disrupting our lives, it's probably going to disrupt our self-care as well. And so I want to introduce this idea of, we do have self-care. We have to do that as humans. We have things we need to do to take care of ourselves, but we also have the idea of what I introduce as soul care. So self-care is much more for the human aspect of it, is much more for taking care of the humanness of who we are. So are we eating well? Are we exercising or getting enough physical activity? And I jokingly say that cavemen didn't stop everything to go to the gym. So exercise is hard for people. Physical activity is very natural. But in our world, our modern world, even physical activity can be unnatural because of the fact that there's too many modern conveniences. So we have lots of obstacles in our modern life that keep us from self-care in general. But we think about, okay, what else generally goes into self-care? So are we sleeping well? What do we do for sleep hygiene, as they call it? How do we get a good night's sleep? What do we do to set up our sleep schedule so that we can actually get good sleep? What is it that happens with us when we're going through menopause or we're having health problems that keep us awake or we have work stress or something else that is keeping us awake? So how do you reconfigure your sleep life in order to, again, feel more healthy overall? Physical activity, again, I'm going to go back to this for a second because of the fact that, again, it is not natural to go to the gym. It is natural to get physical activity. But if you've never been in a family that was physically active, it might not be very natural for you. It might not be something that comes naturally as far as creating a routine. And, there's many people that think that exercise is evil, that it's a terrible thing. Oh, my hair is going to get messed up, or I'm going to have to sweat, or whatever. But, physical activity is one of those things that's fascinating, but it is the only natural thing. It's the only thing, period. But it's certainly the only natural thing that balances every body system. And yet we still avoid doing it at times. So we have all these emotional needs. What do we do with our emotions? What's self-care from an emotional perspective? So self-care has to do with the human, whereas soul care has to do with the soul. The soul care has to do with that inner sense of who we are. Now, when we do soul care, it helps us with self-care. And yet they're not necessarily interchangeable. They're related, but they're not necessarily the same. So I'm going to try to explain the difference a little bit because I think it's going to be helpful for you to understand a couple things about soul care versus self-care. So, when we are feeling down and out, when we have been obliterated by the human condition, when we have had something really stressful go on or ongoing stress happen, when we've had a death in the family or a friendship, when we've had something that has disrupted the human condition, yes, it's nice to be able to do the self-care, but it is oftentimes the soul care that restores us faster. And soul care is much cheaper than self-care a lot of times, and it doesn't take nearly as much time. So, definition of self-care is doing things actively for yourself that basically help you be healthy as a human. Soul care is basically either an active or a passive kind of activity or situation that you put yourself in that feeds your soul in a different way. It restores you from an energetic level. It lets you just breathe in the essence of something that is really wonderful for you. And when I say breathing in the essence, my definition of the soul is the essence of who we are. So I think about it in terms of, are we aligned? Are we doing what we need to do to align with that truth of who we are and how we take care of that? Now, sometimes exercise and nutrition, of course, help our souls because sometimes we love to eat healthy. Sometimes we love to get physical activity. I happen to love both of those. But at the same time, it's the soul care that gets us restored faster. And I often say, I've said this, I don't know how many times in my profession or my career, is that emotional exhaustion tends to take longer to get over than physical exhaustion. And what's interesting about it is soul care is going to help you with the emotional exhaustion faster than the self-care. So when I talk about soul care, I'm talking about the things that you can breathe in or soak into you. That essence of who you are needs to soak in the energy of healthy things. It needs to breathe in or saturate yourself with the essences of the things that bring you joy. Because the soul's most natural state is joy and contentment. If we are not breathing in or taking in or energetically receiving the things that bring us joy and contentment, we're not going to feel good. So I'm going to give you some very simple and easy examples of what soul care is versus self-care. So I'm going to start with food for a second because food and nutrition are important. And so, yes, we have to eat healthy nutrition and healthy food in order to feel good physically. But it's when we savor, and I say that slowly and intentionally, when we savor something, and we can savor something, that we actually bring in the full essence of who it is. And so when I'm doing work with someone for emotional eating, I give them what I call the 3 bite rule. The first one is the one you really want because it's the one you savor. It's the one, so if you're a chocolate person, if you're eating a piece of chocolate with savoring tendencies where you're savoring that chocolate and you're really taking in the energy of that chocolate, by the second one, you're only half tasting it because of the fact that you've already savored it. You've already gleaned or grasped the part of it that you really wanted. Because by the third bite, you're just eating it and you don't care if you're eating more. That's really not healthy if you're going to eat more and more and more chocolate to try to fix something. But if you can start to savor a situation, and I'm saying a situation, not just something like food, but if you can savor that situation and bring that energy of the situation or the circumstance or the experience of whatever it is into you, it makes all the difference in the world. So one of my best examples is that in my upstairs office here, especially after COVID, I had a little hummingbird show up right outside the window. And I immediately that day went and got a window mount hummingbird feeder because I was thinking, okay, if he's in there looking, he was actually looking at a pair of scissors that had red handles. And I could tell he was looking at something. And once I figured it out, it was like, oh, he's looking for food. So I immediately that evening went and got a window mount bird feeder. And I have these hummingbirds. In fact, once I set it up, he was there, and then his partner was there within 5 minutes of me setting it up. But I can now look at these hummingbirds from 3 feet away from me, 2.5, 3 feet away, right outside the window. They come up every day, multiple times a day, two, three, four at a time. And I can just pause and bring in the energy of that little hummingbird hovering over that bird feeder. And I can just bring in the beauty of him or her. And I can bring in the energy of it. And I can be grateful and I can show the appreciation. And it's the essence of bringing that energy in, becoming the moment. And that's one of the things I talk about with savoring. Become the moment. Put your energy into the moment. And then you bring in that energy. And that is soul care. That is feeding your soul immediately. Same thing with trees for me. I'm a tree girl. I have trees everywhere. I have tree artwork. I have leaves everywhere. But I also am surrounded by trees in my house, which is the exact reason I bought this house is I wanted to feel the trees around me. My main level is mid level of the trees, so I constantly feel like I'm in a tree house. And when those leaves start to come out every spring, I try as often as possible to pause and just bring in the energy of these new light green leaves that are popping out and bursting and energetically, you know, there's new life there. You know, there's a lot of new energy there. That's another way to savor and feed your soul. Playing with my dogs. I every night I play with my dogs. Every morning I love all over them before I go to work. And again, I intentionally stay present with those few moments that I'm doing those things to feed my soul. So that is soul care for me. I take a hot bath at the end of every week, and it's a salt bath. It's Epsom salts, and Epsom salts are known to take out physical inflammation, but they're also known to take out emotional inflammation. They take out the emotional toxins from your body. And at the end of a long week of doing psychotherapy or soul healing, I need something to release. And so it's another way. It is self-care because I'm taking that hot bath and feeling the water and feeling the experience of just being there in solitude. Sometimes feeling the jets, massage my back as I'm in there. But I'm savoring the energy of, oh, okay, I'm taking this time for me. I'm feeding my soul. I'm doing soul care. I know this 15 or 20 minutes is going to restore me in a way that something else would not. So the difference between self-care and soul care, they're very related. You can still do good things for your body and have it be soul care, but the soul care are the ways that you bring in the energy about it. I talk a lot about the energy of who we are, the essence of who we are. Everything is energy, and our souls are energy. It's the basic core of who we are. It's the nucleus of who we are, but it's all energy. And when we can figure out individually what it is that we need, what it is that we are restored by, and we actively pursue those kinds of things, then we can bring in that energy. We can basically become the moment enough to bring that energy into us, and it restores us faster. Now, I said active. I also want to talk about the passive part of this. When I say passive, there are things we can do in our environment that can feed our souls and basically be soul-based care without us ever having to lift a finger. What do I mean by that? So, one of the things for me is, again, I love having tree energy around me. So, again, I have tree art. All of that feeds my soul. Another thing, and I do this intentionally, is I love music without words. I hear so many words during the day and through the week that I'm kind of tired of words by the end of those times. And so, if I'm going to have anything, it's going to be either silence or nature sounds, or it's going to be music without words. And I have started the process of bringing out a lot of my relaxation tapes from 20, 30 years ago. I have basically subscribed to a internet system, music system, so I can listen to light jazz. And that's what I listen to almost all the time is light jazz, no words. And that, if I can just sit with that just even briefly at a stoplight when it's on my car, I can feed my soul. These are the kinds of things you can do active kinds of soul care activities, or you can do passive kinds of things that help feed your soul as well. Travel is another thing for me that if I can plan a trip and I can be in wonderment about where I am and I can see new sights and I can meet new people, that is another thing for me that is soul care. It's not just self care, it's soul care. I take it in, I bring in the experience of it, I live the moment. And so I want to really nudge you and encourage you to start thinking about, wow, what am I doing for self-care and what am I doing for soul care? Now, the thing is, self-care, again, takes more time in most cases and it costs more money. And that's why I'm not saying don't do those things. We still need to do those things for the sake of our humanness, but we still have to start incorporating these things that are very soul-filling for us, especially in a time of duress, especially in the time that we are in now in modern history where every time we turn on the news, there's something stressful. Every time we turn around, there's something stressful happening in our country or in the world. If you can pause to find what it is that feeds your soul, fills you up, you can master anything. You can get through anything. You can handle any stress or distress. You just have to know the difference between the self-care and the soul care. So I want to nudge you to just start experiencing this. And if you want more information about this, and this is the joy of understanding this and being able to teach this to other people, is if you want more information, I've created a webinar. It's called The Recipe for Radiance, Mastering the Art and Soul of Self-Care. It is an online thing. You can log into it and watch it at your own leisure. And it's kind of set up in a way that it helps walk you through how to create your soul care practice for the rest of your life. And it helps you understand the different layers. Now, I talk about three different levels of self-care that basically, if you get that recipe figured out for yourself, yourself, tweak it here and there throughout your life, you've got it. You've got what you need, and you understand what it is that will restore you in the most stressful times, or basically keep you going so that when those stressful times happen, you're not obliterated. You're not taken off at the knees. You're not basically taken down with the ship. You're basically able to stay afloat. And I'm going to give you an example of this before I sign off. When I was in graduate school, one of the things that I would do is I would go out into I was working through a student health promotion department of the same university that I was taking my educational classes from, my master's level and my doctoral level. And I would go out into the sororities and the dorms and the fraternities, and I would talk about stress management and other kinds of wellness topics. And there are these different inventories you can take. One of them is called the Holmes-Rahe scale, and that helps you kind of measure what your stress has been like. And basically, it helps you measure it. It gives you this little rating system. Then you go back and you add up the numbers, and then it gives you this kind of set of standards of, if you scored this high, this is your likelihood of becoming ill. And then you have, I think, 4 different levels. And then there's another inventory you can take about, what do you do for self-care? What are the kinds of things you do? And then you score that system. And the beautiful thing is, if you're doing enough, if you had a lot of stress in your life, but you're doing enough to take care of yourself, it counterbalances itself. And my example of this is, I went through a lot during my second year in my doctoral program. I left a marriage. I had my comprehensive exams to do. I had a dissertation coming. I had all of this stuff that was happening. It was very, very, very stressful. And I went out to do a presentation for one of these groups, and I thought, how let me take these exams or these surveys and just see where I was at. And I remember scoring off the charts for the amount of stress that I had had just by looking at that first inventory. And yet, when I compared it to the second inventory was showing I was doing a fair bit to take care of myself. So I didn't feel particularly bad. I didn't get sick during that time. I stayed afloat. I had professors come to me and say, we don't know how you did it. We don't know how you stayed afloat. We don't know how you got everything done with everything that was happening in your life. And so for me, that was proof that if we do enough for self-care and soul care, we are going to balance things out. We're going to stay afloat. And so this is why I talk about soul care. This is actually how I created my soul health model, is to understand all of the different branches of health and why it is important to take us to that next level. And this is also why I've created this webinar, because to me, it is so important for us to understand and learn how to create what I call a recipe, so that once you set that recipe, you never have to set it again. You might tweak it a little bit, add a little ingredient here, take one out. But the whole idea of this is, once you have that figured out, once you've really done a little bit of work of identifying these 3 different levels of care, which really is not that hard. This is why I'm walking you through this process in this webinar. But once you identify this, you don't really have to ever create it again. All you have to do is pull it out and remind yourself, oh, I haven't been doing this, and this is what I need to do next. So I can guarantee you that if you start understanding soul care and implementing much more soul care into your life, you're going to feel better. There's no way you will not feel better. So I hope this was helpful for you. I get excited when I talk about the soul no matter what, but when I talk about soul care and I can teach people how to identify those things for themselves, there's nothing better for me than watching souls evolve. And to me, there's nothing better than helping souls evolve beyond their challenges. So this is just one more tool in doing that. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day, and check out the webinar.